At 5:30, am I ready? Call the December 16th special call meeting of the Board of Education to order. At this time, if you would bow for the invocation, please. Most gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we come to you tonight seeking your guidance, your wisdom, your mercy, and your love. Lord, we have humble hearts. We understand that we are human and that we do not have all the answers, and we do not have all of the right answers above all. But Father God, give us guidance and wisdom tonight to make decisions that would be in the best interest of everyone concerned, and that all things done will be done in accordance with your will. Amen. I'll entertain a motion, if I could, please, to amend tonight's agenda to add a closed session for personnel matters.
Make a motion.
Motion, Mr. Gray, for a second. Second by Ms. Watson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, COVID-19 issues. Dr. Dennis, I'm going to turn it over to you, sir.
If it pleases the board, I'd like to stand while I give this presentation. Excuse me. Scholar.
Sorry, my mouse is not wanting to cooperate very well.
But I'll let you come out of PowerPoint and share. Because that messes up the format. That's it right there, yeah. All right. So what I prepared for the board, good evening, first of all. Chairman, Chance, Madam Chairwoman, Vice Chair. What I put together today is some data for the board to consider as far as COVID and how it's impacting our school system. And we've also put together some possible solutions that can help mitigate some issues within the school system. And at any time, if you have a question, please feel free to stop me. I'm just going to start presenting data, and then I'm going to present some ideas we have to help the school system. So make sure this guy works. Here's our current data trend. This started at 8/13. As you can see, we had starting in August. You see how it moves, and then we had all of a sudden the surge here in October. Right around here is when we actually closed school for 2 weeks, and you see as it moves down, and then it starts to move upward. And after the holiday, after Thanksgiving, we have pretty much what I would call an exponential growth curve in our numbers with COVID. And these are the number of students and employees that were actually quarantined, not the ones that were positive, but they were quarantined. But still, when the students and especially employees are quarantined, that's employees we do not have in the school to help run the daily functions of the school. Now, this is actually a chart that shows the numbers tested positive. Now, while our employees, as you can see, they were still rising, we had a very large spike in students, and I'll get into some more of the minutia later on why the students spiked as much, but still, since the 13th, we just had a steady uptick in the number of employees and number of students who have tested positive. This is a little different. What this shows, and this is from 12/3 to 12/14, so the past week or so, it shows the actual, I wouldn't call it a cluster, but certain students per day, the number of students that were affected. And what you can see is like in West Indian High School, you can see where they would get a big block of numbers one particular day. And, with those larger blocks and those daily student positive cases, they really begin to affect the numbers of students we had in the school.
So Dr. Dennis,
Sir.
on that graph there, like on West Stanley,
Yes, sir.
like on that one day, they had 5 students in the pink there, 5.
Yes, sir.
Because
Positive
it's kind of
cases.
confusing, and then on the
And then on the
14th, they had.
They added another one, which is what got them to the 6.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So why do they think that happened? I mean,
Well,
we're going along and they have.
I know the reason this happened, and I'll be glad to share it in closed session, because if I gave you a little bit of history behind it, it might
Okay.
let us know who the students were, but I'll be glad to answer that. Yes, sir. That's a good question. And so this is just another little breakdown of the one I showed you earlier. This does it every 2 weeks, and as you can see, the blow up in growth here after the Thanksgiving holiday. All right, so these are our statistics as of today. We currently have 505 kids who are currently quarantined. We had a 21% increase from the previous school day, and the reason that increase was so big is we had some athletics that was affected.
Is
I'll
that
talk about that later.
21% or 21?
That's 21 individual students, yes, sir.
Dr. Dennis, we're having a technology glitch. Sean is gonna have to do a little work on the back end. He just wanted to give you a heads up.
Would y'all like me to, would you like to, we have a technology glitch with it being able to get out. Would you like to take a recess until he can fix it?
Sure.
With a motion.
I was just saying, I just got a text saying the same thing, presenter slides are not advancing on the live stream, so, okay.
I'll tell you what, then we can fix that easy. Go out, it's gonna mess the format up a little bit, but if you'll go back to where you had it in there.
I can, it's on that screen.
Can you hit escape?
Yeah.
On there, yes, but this is just my personal computer. There.
I see what you're saying.
How long do you think it'll take for him to,
Well, he's working it now.
oh, okay.
It looks like you might have it in a second.
All right, we'll recess until they tell him he is got it taken care of, and we'll resume.
And Dr. Dennis, just to clarify, that's student and staff positives.
Student and staff. Thank you. Here we go.
I'm waiting to make sure.
Are we back?
It's a little bit delayed, so yes, it appears that we are back.
Good.
Yes.
And I'll call back into session.
All right, so I'll go back just in case anyone had missed. This, again, is just a condensed version of one of the prior graphs. And it shows, again, here, you'll see after we come out of Thanksgiving break, that huge explosion of numbers. So as of December 16, 2020, the statistics are, the number of students currently quarantined is at 505. This is an increase of 21 individual students from the previous day. The number of students who have tested positive for COVID, this is since we began tracking on the 17th or 16th of July, is 179. That in the previous day, we've had 3 additional positives to add to that number. The number of employees currently quarantined sits at 94 employees, and that's an increase of 1 additional employee from the previous day. And as of today, the number of employees who have tested positive for COVID-19, again, since we began tracking July 16, 2020, 86 total employees, and that was up 1 from the previous day. Yes, sir.
I've got a question. Out of the ones quarantined, how many of them have been tested? You got 505 there. How many positives did we get out of that, or are they being tested or not?
Ms. Pennington.
Testing is recommended each time the nurse has a conversation with a parent or a staff member, but it is not required to return to school or to work. They could simply sit out the quarantine period and not test.
So we don't know how many of those quarantined are actually catching the disease as compared to just being quarantined and using 14 days.
They don't have to tell us if they got tested or not or anything to come back. So yes, we do not have data on how many of those 505 are tested, and out of those tested, how many actually yielded a positive result.
You would know the positive result, wouldn't you?
Yes, the positives
Well,
are reported, yes.
Yeah, we know the overall positives, but not out of that, yeah.
So how many do you think are quarantined? I mean, that 14 days is a tough thing to do. So how many, do you have any idea, or is it just on the honor system?
They are told that they are to quarantine. It is followed by a letter that is given to them, that our nurses are operating as an arm of the health department. So it is just as the health director is telling them, you quarantine. Now, have we had reports that people are not abiding by that? Yes, we have. But again, that's out of our control.
But they're still out 14 days.
Yes.
They're still out.
Well, it just depends. The quarantine rules did change per the CDC on 12/2, I think it was.
Right.
And so that time period can be shortened if certain conditions are met.
What are those conditions, Ms. Pennington? You mentioned certain conditions. What are those specifically?
If you are asymptomatic and have self-monitored for 10 days, and there's no fever, no symptoms, and that 10th day, you can return on day 11. If you're asymptomatic and you get a negative test, a PCR test, then you can return after 7 days of quarantine on day 8.
Even with a positive, with a negative?
With a negative PCR, not a rapid.
Okay, so it's pretty much the honor system is what we're dealing with. Here's the honor system.
Yes.
Because
The daily monitoring, that's up to that individual, to that parent, or to that staff member.
Does any of this fall under HIPAA? I would assume so, since they're not
Right.
required to give us.
Yeah, they're not required to give us the information.
Right.
Ms. Pennington, is this followed by every county around us? Is it the same?
Yes, ma'am.
It is the
This-
same guidelines?
Yes,
every
ma'am.
county?
That guidance comes from DHHS through our Safe Schools Toolkit.
Mhm.
And there are updates given to that periodically. The most recent update was 12/4, and it did incorporate the new CDC guidance as of 12/2.
Which is the 7 and 10.
Right.
But we really don't know on those students, how many of them got it in our schools and how many of them had it outside the school and were in the school when they got sick. There's no way to tell that.
But we can tell by the contact tracing that's taking place that is occurring outside of the schools.
Okay.
Yes. We can tell that because we can tell where it originated and, the exposures and things like that. So, but by the contact tracing done manually by the nurses, it is coming into the school
Okay.
and not propagating inside of the school. That we can
We're
tell.
trying to keep the schools safe by quarantining these
Yes.
505 kids.
But are most of these students elementary, high school, what?
Runs the gamut. It really does.
It really does.
Runs the gamut. And I did have some numbers on the schools, but I didn't want to give them out because some of the smaller schools have real small numbers and we were afraid that would be identifiable by whom has not been at school, of course, for a lengthy period of time. So if you wanted those numbers, I'd have to give them to you where they were public. All right. So here are our current issues. Here's our daily life. We have right now a lack of staff at grade levels. Well, I should say we are lacking in staff at grade levels, schools, transportation, child nutrition, due to positive tests and quarantine, as you saw earlier. Our substitute fill rates are fluctuating below 100%. I just received the fill rates earlier. And you had showed, did you email them to me?
No.
Oh,
And she,
thank you.
and this is just for us staff that requires,
This is just for staff that require sub. We've had our fill rates go as low as 84%. The week of December 7th was an especially challenging week. And we were 84, 89, and 84, which means that we could only fill 84% of the staff that had to be filled, mainly being substitutes and, and teachers and things like that during that time. But thanks to our low numbers, we were able to actually move some classrooms around and still be socially distanced and still follow the number of students that we wanted to have in each class to be safe.
Dr. Dennis?
Yes, ma'am.
May I ask a question of you? So we have that problem with the substitute fill rate.
Mhm.
And I think you mentioned, 84%?
There were days that last week that we were at 84%. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and I know you said you combined classes, you did all kinds of creative things, I suppose.
Thank you.
When we do that, are those children, are our children sitting there with their Chromebooks? Are their assignments and everything on their Chromebooks? Because if you are combining classes and they don't have their their teacher that they're used to, I'm assuming that there's not a whole lot of discussion going on between them and a teacher, that they're doing their work from a Chromebook.
It really depends on the situation. There are situations to where, like you said, exactly like you alluded to where they would have had a sub at the time, so whatever the sub materials, and those materials were generally probably delivered through the Chromebook, like you said, that would go, as it usually would. There have been some cases to where you would have, say, a grade level that would have very low numbers, and those students can be moved into a class with the teacher, and they would be able to receive that face-to-face instruction. And Ms. Cower, you can probably tell me better what it would look like on a daily basis.
So, and also we've had cases in middle schools where like your PE, your art, your music are all online. And so like for a day, maybe the art teacher covers the class, this teacher's class. The teacher's quarantined, but they can still teach remotely. So the teacher is online and the kids are interacting with that teacher, but it's just the art teacher's there for the supervision. So it's kind of been a mixture of, each case is
Yes, it's a
different.
lot of different stuff.
And, and I applaud our teachers and their willingness to do what has to be done. But then I look at that and think our specials teachers, our PE, our art, they do have things that they need to be doing, like planning their lessons, teaching remotely their content area. I guess I just wanted to state that because then we're taking those teachers the time that they need for them to have to cover and try to instruct, cover another classroom.
No, you're exactly right. It does, I've been amazed at how well our staff has adapted, but there's no doubt that it's a stress on them. And
Yes.
I remember being a teacher too, anytime I had to go cover a period for another teacher who wasn't there, it was my planning period.
Yes.
And of course, it took away from my ability to plan and do other things during the day. But she did it because she had to do it.
You did it.
Yeah, for sure.
And I applaud our teachers for doing that.
Yeah, they've been phenomenal, and they haven't made a fuss. They've done what they had to do so we can have school.
Yes.
Dr. Dennis has a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So when we are filling these classrooms with special teachers or subs, is that, I assume when you said that week of December 7th, we were struggling, I assume that was a prolonged situation. So there may have been an RP teacher in a classroom for more than a day?
Possibly.
Okay, so I'm just
This
wondering
is
how
possible.
effectively we're, because new standards would have to be taught. I don't know how I'm trying to.
I think you're actually saying it's really hard to deliver the instruction that's needed.
Right.
And
Because with the idea of quarantine, we're still saying it's 7 to 10 days. So if we're unable to get a sub, we're looking at maybe having a special teacher in there for 7 to 10 days.
You're looking at having someone other than the teacher in the classroom for 7 to 10 days. Now, I will say that even though this teacher is quarantined, unless they're positive or sick, and if they're able to, they are still trying to deliver the information
Right.
via virtually at least, just for, But it is, they could, yes, have someone in the classroom for that length of time. All right, moving along, we have had several athletic contests that we've had to cancel due to COVID-19. This rolls into the other one because unfortunately with some of our sports, if one gets it a lot or all the team could be considered, we'd have to quarantine because someone was positive, they were indirect. They were in an affected area with the positive athlete. 5 coaches, 13 athletes have tested positive. 6 teams have been quarantined, which has led to some of the contests being canceled. Obviously, the current issues, we have disruptions to the school environment and curriculum, which Ms. Poplin and Ms. Gibson alluded to earlier. it's becoming difficult to provide students with face-to-face surfaces. And I'm looking at the possibility of maybe if you had a teacher who was maybe a living skills teacher who was delivering, face-to-face services to students, all of a sudden they're out. They can't the virtual services aren't as good as the face-to-face services for some of our students. But we do our best to, of course, provide those services. And as you alluded to earlier, the safety of our students and staff are paramount. And we just had a rough go this past couple of weeks with the staffing and with the disruptions caused by all the students and staff we've had to quarantine or have been positive.
Question, Dr. Dennis. When we do have subs, those subs are able to serve at whatever school or location that they may be needed, or are they basically assigned to a specific location?
So originally, we did assign subs to certain schools so that you wouldn't have them going all across the county.
Right.
In a couple of cases, we've allowed a sub to go between two schools, and only as a last resort because we were having trouble filling all the jobs.
And part of that, I assume, is also because you want to cut down on their exposure.
Exactly. We don't want them going to all the different schools.
Okay.
No, that's correct. So my team and I, we've actually been meeting and going over different options because I think we saw what was going to be inevitable after the holidays. And these are the different options that we're going to present to the board. I'm going to give you our team's recommendation for what we think is the best option. And of course, ask any questions at any time and, feel free to have any discussion. So the options currently are to be considered with mitigating any COVID-19 issues is we could have a remote only option. We could have a delayed return to face-to-face instruction, which I'll explain more, which will be to try to mitigate what we think is going to be the inevitable spike from Christmas and the holidays, and no change to current instructional delivery plan, which means what we're doing today, we would just keep moving forward with. So I'm going to give you some considerations. Considerations with the remote only option, it would provide the least exposure to students and staff because no one will be in school. It is not for everyone, and we have learned that, and some students really struggle with the remote only option. We will always have a remote only option if the student takes advantage of that, but with the remote only, you would take away the option of letting kids come to school. Some students do want the option of face-to-face instruction. We have 800 students right now that are telling us they want to come back to school next semester. Well, we'll talk more about that as we move along. And this can cause staff furloughs in hard to staff areas. If I'm going remote, I have a lot of staff, mainly classified, that provide services that I may not need and I may not know how to pay them. Or we would have to go into fund balance to pay them as a lot of different ways. So if we can't pay them and I can't find things for them to do, then they may become furloughed. And again, these are hard to staff areas. These are classified staff, mainly.
So what does that mean, Dr. Dennis? What's classified?
Classified staff, that's a great question. If you are certified staff, then you have some type of teaching license or certification that allows you to work in a certain area. Mainly teacher, student support, counselors are certified staff. Our classified staff are our non-certified. So they are our staff members who may drive a bus, they may work in child nutrition, they may be our administrative assistants at our sites, but they do not have certification from the state to do the certified jobs within the county. Now, again, that's a really good question because a lot of people don't know that. So considerations when return or delayed return to face-to-face instruction. This model has students coming back to school virtually for an established time period or going for an established time period virtually. And then they would move back to face-to-face, and that's to help mitigate the effects of any surge after the holidays or any surge in general. But we are anticipating a holiday surge. Teachers will have time to organize classrooms for students returning, those 800 approximate students I was talking about. They will have more time to organize classrooms for returning to face-to-face instruction. Because right now, they would have to actually move furniture around and have some different layouts within their classrooms. Our maintenance has done an outstanding job moving and doing things, but right now, and Mr. Bowers, you can speak for it, that will be a monumental task, given a compressed amount of time from when we transition now to next semester, if we didn't have a little extra time. Is that correct?
Yeah, we need extra time, like you say, just that, and as you're going to allude to in the next bullet.
Yeah, the transportation also, when you're adding 800 students with transportation, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they will obviously, they're going to have to craft new routes to pick up these students as they need transportation. And they actually need time to practice these routes before they would go out and go, go live, as we would say, when students would come back face to face. This would also give our nurses some reprieve from contact tracing. We do have some individuals that we're going to hire once we come back to help and assist the nurses with contact tracing. But if we had several weeks of virtual instruction, of course, knowing the amount of time they do contact tracing, there would be a time that they would actually get the reprieve, because they would not need to contact trace at that time. It would not affect when the students would come back. Is that correct, Ms. Pennington?
That is correct.
Okay. And we will also have to subsidize some of our workers' salaries during this time. The ones I can think right off the top will be child nutrition, because they're not going to deliver as many meals as they would if we were all face-to-face. We still are going to have a plan for that I'll discuss later. But we are going to have to subsidize some of their salaries to keep them on. And again, we do not want to lose these individuals, because if they go off and take another job, we're already stressed at child nutrition as it is, then we're going to have a hard time when we do have to come back. The last is no change to the current instructional delivery plan if we stay as is. In our opinion, we would not be able to protect from the effects of any surge that comes after the holidays. There will be major disruptions to schools. We will probably be forced to either close down grade levels or schools because of lack of staff and lack of resources. Teachers will only have a short amount of time to organize their classrooms for students returning face-to-face. Again, the same with transportation, short amount of time to plan for the additional bus riders, and the substitute personnel fill rate will be, as we alluded to earlier, it's going to be below 100%. We don't see a way that there's going to be a new pool of subs that just magically emerge after the holidays that we're going to be able to tap into. This is the team's current recommendation. This is our recommendation, is we would like to see a delayed return to face-to-face. A lot of this is totally predicated upon resources and the lack thereof that we think will be impending due to an uptick in COVID cases coming after the holidays. So right now, with our plan that we're going to present, the students will return to face-to-face learning after the Martin Luther King holiday. So students will return to school on the 19th. There will be virtual instruction to take place from January 7th, which would have been the first face-to-face day, through January 14th, which is the end of the following week. Really, you only have 6 face-to-face days that will be missed based on how our calendar is. And we had some professional development coming in before they would come back. They only missed these 6 days face-to-face. So even though I'm saying 2 weeks, we're talking about 6 actual school days. The aforementioned considerations support this recommendation. We had a meeting with the health department. Chairman Chance was on the meeting with us, Ms. Pennington and the cabinet, and we discussed with the health department some of the things we just discussed with you, what our struggles are. We're trying to keep school open. And when we presented them with what we thought would be a plan to mitigate some of the effects of the impending spike, or what we think will be an impending spike, the health department highly endorses the plan for a delayed face-to-face return. In our plan, we still will have staff report to their assigned sites. They will be mandated to socially distance. Students will still have the option to participate in athletics at the high school level unless the North Carolina High School Athletic Association says otherwise. And we will provide child nutrition services at pickup sites and food delivery. And as we talked about earlier, whenever you do go to virtual, you have some of the classified staff who won't really necessarily have a lot to do. We can reallocate some of them to the help with the food delivery as well. And that will help keep them dutifully employed. Any questions?
I have a comment about this. Could you go back to the slide that says no change to current instructional delivery plan? With all the things that you have said to us and others like you, Ms. Calvert, others from our county office here. I mean, I look at this, if we continue on the same instructional delivery plan that we're on, number one, we are killing our teachers. We are doing a disservice to our students. We're killing our nurses. I mean, everyone. So we'll end up we got people who want their children to participate in athletics. And you know, that's a big part of, you know, my life. If we continue on this, we'll end up not having any athletics because we're gonna have students and athletes that, you know, between COVID testing, coaches, whatever, it's just gonna be hard for us to maintain that. I think what bothers me most, and I'm just saying, we've got to do something. There is no way that we can continue with this after the holidays without doing anything, because we're not going to have subs. We cannot operate our schools. And I believe that if we support and we love our teachers and our nurses like we say we do, then we've got to provide a way for them to get all these things done, like having new students coming to their classroom and getting their classrooms reorganized again. It's almost like the beginning of the year. And they've got to have time. And I want them to be able to be healthy. I want our students to be healthy. I want our families to be healthy. And I know we may mention later in closed session as to how some of this is being spread like it is. But to me, it's like the board has an option for us to do our part and support. And then it's like the public has an option to help us.
That's the biggest.
To help us in this, because we want our children in school. I want children in school. I think our teachers want our children in school. They want to return to normal if we ever can. But, you know, we as a board can support, and our county office staff, our administrators, our teachers, our staff, our nurses, our transportation, everybody. Then we do our part, but the public is going to have to help us if we are going to be able to have school to continue. Or we're going to be on a cycle. We're going to end up on a cycle of we're in school, surges, now we're on remote. And I just have to say that because I think our schools, I think we're really doing our part.
Well, I will say that there's some recent empirical evidence that's come out through some articles. When I was on a Zoom with the superintendents in our region, and it supports that schools are the safest place because they are following the rules essentially, and you know, they're clean and disinfected and socially distanced, and it is coming in from the community that's causing a lot of issues in the school, and that's why we're afraid that when the holiday season hits, these times that we won't have the students in the schools, and some of the, you know, I'm just going to say it like it is, some of the activities that are going to be had over the holidays are going to perpetuate a spike.
Yes.
And I would be remiss, and I apologize earlier, I did not give my cabinet enough credit. I've had cabinet members filling in at child nutrition sites serving food because we just didn't have people to do it. And they've been outstanding. It's been all hands on deck. And we're just afraid after Christmas, we're not going to have enough hands.
Right.
And unless we do something to try to break the cycle or try to get some, again, reprieve from this.
Yes.
And you're right, as you said earlier, it's going to be an excessive strain on staff that it's already there. I think we're really we would be buying a very short amount of time before we would have to be closing either grade level schools, this, that, and the other. And then just having enough staff to just keep going, I don't see that being feasible
Right.
if we don't do something.
Right. I agree. And I appreciate, the cabinet here, you putting all this together for us. But it's hard to think that you, our people here, can't be here doing what you need to be doing because you're having to go out and fill these vacancies to keep things running. So we've got to do something, and to me, that's not even an option at this point to continue things, come back after the holidays. My opinion, board members. But that right there, because we'll find ourselves closing down schools or school system real fast, I think, if we want to continue on the same trend.
So what are you saying? You want to go remote?
I want to follow the recommendation of Dr. Dennis, which is a delayed return face-to-face. Give time for our teachers to get their classrooms together, our transportation department, give time, and give everybody a chance to, I hope, to those that are quarantined or whatever, to get them healthy again. We saw that this really worked back in October. I mean, that clearly, we were able to see that. And I'm really, this is what I'm saying, Ms. Watson, I'm really hoping we're doing our part. Our teachers, our schools are doing their part. The public has to work with us. And, we've got to avoid all these things like the mass gatherings, and that's just how I feel.
I could just interject. Two things. We're going to be dealing with COVID next semester, all semester. And based on what it looks like with the distribution of vaccines and the willingness of the public, we're going to be dealing with COVID next fall semester. I think that's a fair assessment. I would prefer to see, not now, it's too late. That surge that you just showed us is out of hand. It's going to get worse. Everybody said it, and I think that the NCDHS today said it was getting much worse. I'm supportive of the delayed return. I think we need to look at coming up with protocols to stop these hotspots when they happen. If that means shutting down 7th grade at a middle school, when we shut down, just that. This is a recommendation for y'all to look at. Personally, though, I'm not but a few months out of the classroom. Okay? And I'll be honest with you, to have an effective educational program is like juggling bowling pins while you're standing on a balance beam. In an ideal year, I got a little taste of the remote stuff, and it's like you're juggling your bowling pins and they throw a chainsaw at you, just with it. If you ask me as a teacher to do my job, developing 2 different lesson plans, remote and face-to-face, and then have to pick up someone else's job, you're throwing a grand piano at these people. They're literally burning themselves out. So I think this is the way to go, because right now, this is not a spike, this is a surge. Personally, I like to see every kid in every classroom from now on, but we don't have that option, I don't think. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
And it's my understanding right now that our hospital is even kind of overloaded right this minute. And, if we don't kind of take that into effect. And the other question I had is for the K-4, if we were to do this virtual, would that be a packet and the computer, or
That's a good question.
only?
That's a good question. I talked to Mr. Britt, our technology director earlier, we're gonna try to get enough computers to get everyone a device at home. Yeah, that's a good question.
If I
But there will be
may.
back for those who.
Dr. Blake Lewis, and you also had some additional information.
For those of you who were previous board members, if you remember back in October when we had to shift to remote, I presented to you what our CNI team put together for remote learning expectations. And so we do have enough devices to outfit our K-4 with a device and a packet of information as well, with the device primarily being used by the teacher to communicate and for the students to work on written assignments in that packet, and then the teacher can still offer supplemental instruction to go along with the packet using the device. But our 3-5 and our 9-12 are very accustomed to this, and they would just roll on business as usual. They're ready and prepared for that.
And Dr. Blake Lewis has taken what we had used initially when we had shut down during the October spike, and she has updated it for expectations for January 7th to the 15th, so everything will be up to date. And if anyone wanted a copy of that document, I'd be glad to share it after the meeting.
Dr. Dennis, I have another question. Now, during this time of delayed, return, are we getting daily updates? Can we still follow and track how our school personnel and the numbers that we have or children? Because what if we're not at a point come at the end of MLK Day, or this day of return? What if we are there and that day comes and we're not quite?
That's a good question. I know exactly what you're saying. I was going to bring that up.
Okay.
First of all, I'll let Ms. Pennington, and I'll answer the second part of your question. I'll let her answer the first part about the tracking.
It's a great point, because we did see that spike. We had a dip during our remote learning in October. And you have to question, is that attributed to lower incidence, or was it attributed to we weren't available for parents to report symptomatic students to? We didn't see who wasn't coming to school and following up. So it could have been both. We are looking at revamping our processes for second semester, looking at some resources that can help the nurses. And some of it is electronic resources. And it may come into play that would help us to gather that information from families. My understanding is that staff would continue to physically report to work, and that wasn't the case the last time. So with the staff, I do feel like we can have accurate counts as to where we are currently with any kind of outbreaks or surges. But for students, I think that will be a struggle.
That's a good point. And yeah, the staff are really the only ones we're going to get the best data on, because they are going to be in our schools and they're still going to be going through the same protocol. Now, as far as you mentioned with this time right here, if at any time, we'll say the January 5th board meeting, we get together, we're reviewing data, and I'll be glad to give a COVID update at that time, and we see disturbing trends, the board can always adjust at that time if they feel the need to do so, or at any time for that matter. So that's, that would be a decision that can be made by the board.
Okay. I just want to do this right.
Oh yeah, we all want to do it right.
Do it right. I don't want to return when numbers are still very high. It's almost like, to me, we're just asking to, for the same thing. I just want to do it, whatever it takes, I want to do it right.
Dr. Dennis?
Yes, sir.
I think we're at a totally different time than we were back in October. There's just a lot more cases. It's all in the community.
I agree.
So I think the main point that we have today, we are going to change what we're doing probably the first of the year, but the public needs to understand. I know they're upset. They don't have childcare. They don't have, but it's going to be up to all of us in the whole community to be more careful, wear our mask, even though we don't want to, and knock this thing down. Otherwise, it's just going to keep going till everybody gets infected or till everybody gets a vaccine. So it's kind of a community effort. That's what it's going to take to get us back because it's coming from the community in, not from us out.
That's correct.
It's just gonna be a community effort. And it's gonna be hard on probably half the families that have to have somebody stay out of work and they're losing income. It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be tough. But all of us just have to work together to kind of make it work, because if we don't, it's not gonna happen.
So that's a
It
good
can
point.
go on and extend out for a period of time, which I don't want, but unless we all work on it.
Yes, sir.
I have a quick question. When we took the previous, when we went remote in October, teachers, did they work from home?
Yes, sir.
We said, how come we're bringing them back into the schools this time if there's more incidents? I know the school's probably the safest place in the whole county for everybody, but that was true in October.
Sure.
So why are we doing it differently now?
I do not know why the decision was made in October the way it was made, so I would have to defer to someone else. But I could give you my rationalization for bringing them to the school.
Okay.
And I think a lot of it comes to, and we alluded to a little earlier, if they're coming into school, I know I'm gonna know better what my staff situation is gonna be when we have to bring everybody back face to face. I know we're gonna have to keep the schools open anyway, because some staff are gonna need the internet access at the school for wherever they live. They're just not able to obtain good access. In my personal opinion, as socially distanced as they be, they still, I believe the face-to-face, as far as the ability to collaborate and do these things face-to-face, is far richer than it would be virtually. And I think as far as the principal being the principal academic leader of the school could also better be able to, when they come back, be able to, help with making sure that we're getting good instruction to our students. Also, we're going to have teachers who need to be there anyway to help move their classrooms, change their classrooms to adjust to the kids that are coming back, like we alluded to earlier. I don't see how they'll be able to stay home and be effective with all the things they're going to have to do. And I'm worried about maybe some of our staff with just the way it is. I'm worried that we won't be able to get, if we're staying at home and we're not on a more structured environment, I don't think we're going to get accomplished everything we're going to get accomplished in a short amount of time. That's just Jared Dennis's opinion. And I'll be glad to take anything from anyone else. A lot of the decision was made differently earlier.
Well-
And they will be, and they have signed an affidavit, and they know they have to stay socially distanced and, do their due diligence to stay safe.
And so in October, everyone went remote. But now in December with Christmas break, our staff will have had a 2-week period that hopefully they'll be responsible during the holidays. So it does kind of create that a little bit of a barrier there for staff, and then get them back. And then there's another barrier before students return.
But I think there's a lot of work to do, starting a new semester virtually, having to do some of the mechanical work that's going to need to be done. And just inherently, I'm going to have them open anyway for people to come in and do different things and get different resources. So I'll say that it was my recommendation that they come to school after the break is over for those first 2 weeks.
And I think you alluded to this, and Mr. Grace, I remember a couple meetings back when you brought it up. Our teachers are following the protocol that they're supposed to follow, correct? Correct?
I was going to mention, in October, we had found that we weren't having the compliance we needed. Another reason we let them all work remotely is we needed a time to train. And since then, we have had much better compliance. The health department has even told me that their reports, their observations are that we're doing a better job. Yes.
Our teachers are, when they sit in PLCs or whatever, they are socially distanced, and they are wearing their masks.
It's improved, yes, greatly.
I'm gonna say there are the pockets that have to have been corrected.
Well, I guess, and
that was, like I said, that was a human nature aspect. There's areas we're gonna have to correct and adjust fire to, but yeah,
I mean, I certainly support our teachers. I mean, being a retired teacher, I support our teachers, but I want our teachers to know that what this board, decision that this board is making, we're wanting our teachers to follow through on the protocol and guidelines, whatever, the training that they have had too. We just got to try to get a handle on this. And I appreciate them. I appreciate our teachers doing that.
We all know this pandemic's been a strain on everyone from top to bottom. It doesn't matter whether you're a classroom teacher, an administrator, a secretary at one of the schools, a data manager, doesn't matter. It's been stressful on everyone from the standpoint of life as you knew it is no longer the same, and it will continue to be no longer the same for the foreseeable future. As Dr. Leffler said, until there's enough vaccine or enough people, again, herd immunity, this thing doesn't go away. Sorensen said, I agree, we're going to be dealing with it into next fall as well. We're going to have to adjust on the fly. We're going to have to take things as they come. This is going to be a cycle, in my opinion. It's going to go from one extreme to the other, up and down, back and forth, whatever. We're just going to take it as it comes. We don't know what each day holds or each week holds. And two, I think, the recommendations change so frequently as well. From wherever, be it CDC, be it DHHS, whatever, the guidelines are changing, and again, they're changing based on what is being seen out the community and the public. But everyone is to be commended, in my opinion, from every aspect. The central office, the superintendent, certainly the teachers, the secretaries in the schools, custodians, everyone should be commended for the job they're doing. And truthfully, I don't think had we gone remote for those 2 weeks in October, we would have made it this far without another major shutdown.
No, I definitely agree with that. And I think like you said, the staff's done a great job getting us to this point where we are and still being able to have school safely.
I just have one other question. We're seeing this surge and we're saying that it's spread across all of the grade levels. Is there any issue with bringing all these students back in January and not having the littles as separated as they were before? With like the 6 foot, I mean, are we doing that?
I see what you're saying. So you're saying, when we come back, right now the plan is for the K4, for the young kids, they don't have to be as socially distanced as
right.
The big kids. And we can definitely, looking at numbers and things like that, have that discussion later on before we come back if that's something that needs to be approached.
I was just.
I don't think that's a great point, a great question, and we're definitely going to have a conversation about that.
Because it seems like we're getting positives all the way across, not just, as before they were saying kids weren't getting it as much, but it seems like our numbers are kind of.
Prior to K4 moving to Plan A, when we were contact tracing, we were limiting the number of students that were quarantined. It was typically, because we were 6 feet apart. Typically, on either side and behind and in front. And you may just have a handful, but since moving to Plan A, we are seeing entire classrooms having to quarantine because they're so close.
And so we're even bringing more back in January, and that was why I was asking, is that going to possibly cause a big cluster of people having to be out at one time?
It could, yes.
Okay.
And as we get more data after the holidays, those are conversations we may need to have at the next board meeting.
And if I could speak to that also, keep in mind that transportation, is going to be looking at large increase in the students we have to transport to school. We can't add drivers or add more buses because we can't fill the buses that we have. And so, for K5, one of the options would be looking at increasing the number of students on the bus.
Yeah, we had the conversations. We would not max the bus out, but we would need to increase capacity. There would be some seating arrangement opportunities we have to look at as well to further have a safer, but If that's the way we end up going, then Mr. Bowers is right. We just don't have enough bus drivers. We got enough buses, we just don't have enough people driving.
How many's on the bus now?
Well,
12.
no, excuse me, 27. I'm sorry, it's 24.
24.
I'm sorry, 24. What we were talking about, like Dr. Dennis said, is instead of one to a seat, two to a seat.
With a seat in between.
No,
Every seat there.
every seat would have two.
And that would be at
That would be K5.
People coming back.
We would need to double the capacity of the bus essentially.
Yes, we need to go to 48.
But they wear their mask on the bus also, right?
Yes, ma'am. And the bus hold, how many does the bus hold? 72?
Yes.
So that just kind of gives you
That
an
protects the driver.
idea.
It's just, I just wanted to mention that, coming back since you brought it up, it's going to be a challenge on buses if we don't do something with capacity. Because, there's just not, it's not an option to increase buses. We can't move, we can't run.
And the only other option really would be to run double routes or some kind of track or something like that. Then you're going to look at students getting to school at this time and then a whole nother load coming an hour and a half later. And that'd be
You may have some parents too that'll just bring them.
and that's true too.
You will have, but on the information we sent out, there was quite a few students that were requesting.
Yes, ma'am.
Just as with the buses, I mean, we can't make the classrooms any larger than they are. And it just seems like if the numbers are going up like they are, if we go right back and bring on additional students back, that distance is just gonna get smaller and smaller.
Who sets the capacity for the bus?
I guess the capacity for the bus from sixth grade up is set, by the state through the toolkit, because we're still having to social distance. When we went to Plan A, I guess it's really, we may try, they strongly recommend in the toolkit that you continue to social distance on the Plan A on the buses. It's strongly recommended, not required.
It moved from required to recommended once they changed the legislation.
So at that point, I guess it would really be up to the board to decide if we want to increase the bus capacity, at the K5 level. But if we don't, like Dr. Dennis said, we're really probably looking at double runs.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's gonna suggest we do that. We can't do it. You're gonna have to increase the capacity. We can't artificially hold it down and start creating imaginary buses, so.
I don't know that it would make much sense to decrease the bus capacity if we're going to put them all in the same classroom.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Good.
Any more questions, folks? Discussion?
Recommendation of superintendent and his staff is to delay return to face-to-face until January 19th.
I move that we take the recommendation of our superintendent to delay our return to face-to-face to January
The 19th.
19th.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'll second.
A motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Question? Everybody clear on the motion?
And just to make sure I clarify the motion now, this will begin after Christmas break. Yes.
Okay. Questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sims. And now phones will go up and.
Well, I make a motion to include session for personnel.
Yes.
Okay.
Second. There will be a 5-minute recess in between. For personnel, correct?
Yeah, for personnel. Yes. Under North Carolina.
You're welcome. Middle school.
Calls back into open session, entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Pop, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We adjourn. Thank you.